Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to one of the first webinars that the Chesapeake Bay Program Communications Office will be hosting with the U.S. Forest Service and the Chesapeake Bay Program Forestry Work Group. We're very excited, and hopefully we'll continue this partnership going forward. My name is Rachel Felver. I'm the Communications Director here at the Chesapeake Bay Program with the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, and I'm pleased to invite you to tap into community stewards to manage your tree planting goals. A few housekeeping items before we get started today. You all are muted and you will not be able to unmute. I also want to let you know that the best way to ask questions, and we encourage you to ask all the questions throughout the whole presentation, is to access this Q&A box that you can see at the bottom of your screen there. We will receive all the questions. We will save them for the open question period at the end of the webinar, but we will make sure that we read almost all of them if we have time, and if not, we will make our best effort to follow up and answer them afterwards. And this webinar is being recorded. We will make sure to post it on the Chesapeake Bay Program's YouTube page. The link is right there, at least 48 hours afterwards, just to give us some time to get it cleaned up and ready to go. And we'll also send out an email letting you know when it's up there and available. So I will stop there and I will turn this over to Sally Ross.
Welcome, everyone. We're thrilled. I'm Sally Ross, a UCF specialist with the U.S. Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Program. Welcome to today's webinar titled Tap into Community Stewards to Meet Your Tree Planting Goals. We're excited to have you join us as we explore the valuable role of tree stewards in achieving our tree planting objectives. Our goal today is to showcase successful tree steward programs from the Mid-Atlantic region and provide you with insights that you can apply to your own work. We have 3 exciting speakers lined up today to share their experiences and expertise, and I will share more about their background experiences. First up, we have Craig Highfield. Craig Highfield is the Forest Program Director for the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. The mission of the Forest Program is to pursue innovative strategies to improve forest health, create new forests in areas important to water quality, and promote the benefits of forest and resource management to landowners, policymakers, and the general population of the 6-state Bay watershed. Craig leads the forest team based in the Alliance's state offices in Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Okay, our second presenter is Abel Olivo. Abel is the Executive Director of Defensores de la Cuenca, which translates to Watershed Defenders, a nonprofit dedicated to engaging Latinos and Spanish speakers in watershed-related issues and experiences. A community activist in Prince George's County, Maryland, Abel uses his insights and perspectives as a former lobbyist and advocate to connect resources and relationships through coalition building and strategic partnerships for the community. Abel has extensive experience in developing and implementing policy and engagement campaigns to maximize reach and impact and message. So thanks to him. And last up, we have Fred Chalfant. Fred Chalfant is an urban forester with TreeBaltimore, a program of the Baltimore City Department of Recreation and Parks. Since 2020, he has led the Baltimore Tree Keepers program. He is an ISA board-certified master arborist, municipal specialist, and a track-qualified professional. As a member of the Baltimore City Forestry Board, Fred leads the Baltimore City's Champion Tree Program, where he seeks out and measures the city's largest trees. In 2013, Fred was a part of the first cohort of tree keepers. So let's dive in and learn more about the power of tree stewards. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. My name is Craig Highfield. I'm the Forest Program Director for the Alliance, and I'm going to give you a basic overview of some programs around the Bay watershed that actually does this. It taps these community stewards, including our own, which we develop, but we learn from so many other programs that are out there. So I'm going to get into some of those other programs.
Hey, Craig, would you mind turning your camera on?
I guess, sure. think anyone wants to see me. Sure. How do I advance the slides, or do you do that? Okay. Well, first of all, with the goals, we're kind of lucky in the Bay watershed that we actually have robust goals for expanding urban tree canopy. Coming out of the Chesapeake Bay Agreement, we have lofty goals, and it's the great thing about it is, the states participating in this have all kind of agreed to these goals of what they like to see in the urban tree canopy expansion. So the tough part is that we have robust goals. It's do we have the capacity to do it, to reach these goals? And so there are a lot of strategies, for this, but one of them is really kind of expanding the volunteer capacity to be able to bring trees into our communities. And there's really no better way than to actually tap community members to kind of lead these efforts within their own communities. Next slide. But I'll be honest, it's not as easy as that. This actually is a tree planting that I witnessed on a jog through a park in New Jersey when I was visiting some family, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks. Where you see this probably as a volunteer planting. It was a volunteer with a big heart, wanting to do the right things, but often untrained volunteers. Well, if the trees don't get in the ground correctly, I was totally baffled at what was going on here. But the tree is in the ground, but we don't know if it's proper. The problem is we want these trees to be part of the canopy. So there's a lot more to it. So, we probably have all worked with volunteers and had successful volunteer plantings. But the idea of growing this capacity within our communities, it's really training leaders within these communities to be the expert. That's how we're going to build this army of tree planters to reach our goals. And so when we were even thinking about developing ours, we started with existing programs that were out there. And there's so many in the Mid-Atlantic region. There's some very strong ones, including this first one that I'll talk about. Is the Tree Tenders program in Pennsylvania. This was started around the Philadelphia area, outside the Bay watershed, by the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. And it was just that. It was not only providing the technical skills to locate areas to plant trees, to plant them, and then to maintain them until they establish and grow big, and then even coming back for pruning and after planting care over the years. So it was a very robust program. It's been around for a while. They developed their own kind of textbook that, it's designed for volunteers who may not be so privy to the nomenclature within the arboricultural world. But it gives you that education for them to confidently lead these programs. This is supported by Penn State Extension, the urban forestry part of Penn State Extension, who are located throughout the state that provide this training and this support for these programs. Next slide. The program was also offered initially in Pittsburgh after it left Philly. So the two major metropolitan areas in Pennsylvania. Very similar, same idea, connecting with the assigned urban forester from Penn State over in that, where they lead those technical trainings and be supported by Tree Pittsburgh. Next one. So Penn State also, in a way to spread this throughout Pennsylvania, outside the major metropolitan areas, they do offer tree tenders trainings. It's communities requesting this, extensions set up to reach out to these communities, but they do offer an in-person or an online course, a tree tender course to train community volunteers in the proper ways to plant trees and take care of trees and to organize planting. So it's a 7.5-hour course. They do it virtually. So it's usually an hour a night for 7 courses, a little bit longer too. But they also offer this going into the communities to offer a full day course, kind of hands-on experience as well. So Penn State is a big supporter of that, expanding it across Pennsylvania. We learned a lot from them. They've helped support some of our programs as well. Next. But the tree tenders course, you obviously, this is not a full-on college course, a semester type course in this. but it gets to really what we want volunteers to know about, at least the minimum what we want them to know about in order to plant trees. So this is kind of their sessions. They have their 7 webinar sessions, or it's usually a full day, but it's kind of the topics that they want. But you'll notice there, it's really the technical parts of how to plant and take care of a tree, but also there's the other parts too that we want people to know is how to organize a tree planting event. You know, potential funding that might be out there. So they're covering more than just the technical, but we want this to be successful so these community volunteers can kind of lead their own efforts. Next. A little further south from us, I'm here based in Maryland, is another very stalwart program called Virginia Tree Stewards. And it operates similarly to the Tree Tenders program. It's led by the Trees Virginia, and with support from Virginia Department of Forestry and Virginia Cooperative Extension. Next slide. And this one, it's similar. This is their course. Theirs is a little bit more robust. They offer 2-hour sessions, usually online or sometimes in person over periods of time that you would go like every Tuesday or so for 2 months. But you can see a lot of the topics are very similar. It comes to mind what I think is important for volunteers to know or to be trained in to be able to lead their own successful planting. They also have a very thorough training manual as well. It's 121 pages. It is the textbook for this program. So it's both the text that people can take with them, but it's also a very robust training course. Very good. And they operate in various communities throughout Virginia, throughout the Commonwealth. Hosted generally from each city. It's a group of volunteers. Sometimes they're affiliated to or offer support through their own municipality to support their efforts within there. Then coming over to DC, well, there's, when you're talking about a nonprofit in urban trees in Washington, DC, there's no one like Casey Trees. They've been doing a lot of effort over the years in increasing urban tree canopy, but also engaging the community within DC, the residents within DC, to be their own leaders. Now, this one's a little bit different than the other two who kind of followed a similar pattern. Next slide. They offer more of a mentorship, which is kind of an interesting approach. So they do have a virtual training. It's only an hour and a half where they're covering kind of the basics of everything the other two programs covered. But the idea on that then is their volunteers or their team leaders are being mentored through at least 3 community tree planting events within DC under the guidance of Casey Tree staff to kind of more of a hands-on learning within that. So it's a mentorship that they have to follow through. Next one. Tree Keepers in Baltimore City. This is another great one that we've actually looked into when we're trying to develop ours, but Fred's on the phone here, or is on this webinar. So I'm going to defer to him on all this when his talk. So next one. So that comes down to ours. So, we noticed there's, when we were in Maryland, there's a robust program in Pennsylvania and Virginia and DC and Baltimore, but what about the rest of Maryland and DC? So we worked with U.S. Forest Service and Maryland Forest Service and the Delaware Forest Service to try to start a very similar program, borrowing from all the programs that are out there to develop one in the rest of Maryland, outside of Baltimore, in Delaware as well. So we call it the Chesapeake Tree Stewards program. But it's very similar goals that we have in mind is how are we going to train volunteers within our urban and suburban environments, to go ahead and lead their own tree planting and maintenance efforts. Next. So we sat down, with Maryland Forest Service, anyone engaged in urban forestry, and just came up with similar tasks. I think that everyone has discovered is, what's that bare minimum we want people to know, our leaders, kind of our stewards to know to be able to lead their own efforts successfully. Next. And so, I thought about coming up with my own manual or having manuals for that, a Chesapeake Tree Stewards manual, but that's a lot of work. There's a lot of great resources out there. Luckily at the time, I was working out of a U.S. Forest Service office, and, there were boxes of these publications, which I think were quite excellent. So it's the Urban Tree Watershed Forestry Manual, Part 3. It's a 3-part series, but Part 3 is really designed for communities. It takes you through, you know, the proper planning, tree selection, the whole gamut. So it's an excellent textbook that we would use. It's available online too as a PDF for free. So we've leaned on these as kind of our modules there. The other one was the Tree Owner's Manual. So how we designed our program, we designed it right before COVID hit. It was going to be an all-day training, but we quickly switched to virtual training. So we have 4 sessions that are about an hour and a half. Those are the 4 topics we felt we would hit for a 6-hour program. And then we would do an in-person planting or maintenance event of following that. And usually that we'd have a site ready for it, but anyone to get certified as a Chesapeake Tree Steward or Maryland Tree Steward, Delaware Tree Steward would have to come out to that training for that hands-on event to kind of, you know, put their knowledge to work. So ours was a little bit different in the fact that, you know, I was the only one in Maryland leading this. So we, you know, the Alliance, we rely on partnerships to do all of our work. So for all of our trainings, we selected organizations that were kind of leading those efforts. So we partnered with them so they could be the support within their own region to that. So they were part of this and they drew the community together for us to be able to train. Next. Delaware, actually, Tree Stewards is very similar to ours. We went hand in hand. The models look the same. So we worked with them. So next. Yeah, so that just the same four option that we had. Next one.
I'm just here to say you got about a minute, Craig.
I'm about a minute ready. Okay, our last thing here is so we support U.S. Forest Service with this Chesapeake trees.net. It's the Chesapeake Tree Canopy Network, where if you look at that red circle there, it lists all kind of the tree steward groups that I just mentioned, has all their links to their websites and, you know, available to anyone. I would say if you are interested in any of these programs, reach out to them. The groups that we reach out were more than willing to share resources and things that we have, including us. So, you know, it'll look different anywhere you go, but a lot of the topics will be quite similar and your approaches will be similar as well. So, which we'll probably learn here in the next talks. All right, thanks.
And Fred, you should be able to go ahead and control your slides now.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Rachel. So I'm not really used to talking about the program as a whole, but more just actually talking to our tree keepers. But again, my name is Fred Chalfant, and I'm an urban forester with TreeBaltimore. I'm going to talk about our tree keepers program. So Baltimore Tree Keepers was started in 2013. There were stewardship programs in Baltimore prior to that, but Tree Keepers was created in part to formally incorporate stewards under city supervision. So originally it was managed by an NGO partner under the supervision of TreeBaltimore and the Forestry Division. But since 2017, it's been managed by TreeBaltimore with the assistance of numerous partners. And I began coordinating the program in 2020, shortly after I started working for the city. So a little bit about TreeBaltimore. It's going to understand a little bit how Tree Keepers fits in here. So TreeBaltimore is the city of Baltimore's initiative to achieve a 40% tree canopy. And we work as an umbrella group. To achieve our goal, we work with a broad spectrum of groups. This could be federal and state agencies, other city agencies, NGOs, whether they be national, regional, or local, community and friends of parks groups, and individual residents such as tree keepers. And we really can't achieve our mission without these partnerships. We provide a lot of resources for them. We also run our contract street tree planting program. So Tree Keepers becomes an essential part of this kind of umbrella group and partnership. So for us, it's all about connection. So Partnership and connection is central to TreeBaltimore tree keepers. We introduce and connect tree keepers to our partners. These partners in turn provide instructors and also send their staff through the program, but they also direct people to the program. In turn, tree keepers support our partners, and tree keepers are often core volunteer for these partners. So we will have instructors from the U.S. Forest Service. Obviously, tree keepers aren't going to be necessarily engaging directly with the U.S. Forest Service, but they may be with Blue Water Baltimore, which has lots of volunteer tree planting events and helps our tree keepers towards their certification. Or they may just engage with one of our partners like Tree Trust or Baltimore Green Space in other ways to help support their mission. So how does tree keepers work? So if we look at the curriculum, we teach 2 core classes in the spring and the fall. These are similar to what, if you broke them down into their modules, to what Craig talked about in these other programs. And then tree keepers can then do a planting or pruning track, or even both. Introduction to planting is also taught in the spring and the fall, while introduction to pruning is taught twice during the winter. So we attempt to balance the content to give people enough information without overwhelming them. We've sort of found that sometimes if you overwhelm people with a lot of detail, they don't necessarily remember the most important things that you want them to do. That may apply to like planting or any other tree care. So we want to make sure that they get the core points. So total class time for the planting track is about 9 to 10 hours, with about approximately 6 hours of event volunteering. And people's schedules can be a problem. So while we recommend classes be taken in order, a number of folks will miss a class and take it the following season. There is one exception. Field sessions require attending the respective intro class. We also offer a number of plus classes, project management, tree selection, tree ID, botanical nomenclature, and this winter, trees and a law. We do this a little bit differently. So we want to keep the core planting and pruning track. And because we found that a lot of stewards are not going to want to go and start, they like to plant, but they don't want to start their own project. So we kind of focus the people who are interested in that into a project management course. So we certify people, they get a little certification. So we are a municipally led tree program. So certification serves as a permit to plant or prune trees in the right of way. But it also helps us in monitoring the work that goes on. And people get swag, and people love their swag and their cards. We give baseball caps and t-shirts to planters, winter caps and sweatshirts to pruners. The certification and swag, of course, are recognition, and it really builds our program. We also celebrate our newly certified tree keepers at our gatherings, which we have twice a year. So tree keepers get the sense of community when they're in there. There's also assurance. Now, this is assurance both for tree keepers and for us. In terms of confidence of tree keepers when they go through the program. But having a card and gear can help the assurance of people otherwise. Frankly, the card and swag help a number of tree keepers who might otherwise be confronted simply for doing work around public trees outdoors. The city also gets assurance in terms of the quality of work for what's going on in the right of way. And lastly, all this can lead to opportunity. So this was actually the opportunity that got me in 2013, that got me into the field of arboriculture. But there are other opportunities that we work with. So workforce development is something we're really working beyond just the traditional steward model. This would seem like a no-brainer, tree keepers and workforce development. Our partners already send their staff through the program. So when the U.S. Forest Service started a new urban silviculture workforce development program in 2023, they asked TreeBaltimore to incorporate tree keepers into 1 week of an 8-week program. And we've done this the last 2 summers. It's been very successful. The 2 photos here are of each of the different cohorts, 2023 and 2024. And they get exposed to all aspects of the forestry department, and then go through the whole tree keepers curriculum. And we've been thinking beyond this. So this fall, we'll be presenting a workshop to our partners for those of their staff. Again, they already go through our program, but this would be for those of their staff that are studying for the ISA exam, sort of a basic for that. But also youth. So we've been working with new exposures to incorporate our stewardship, not just to our stewards, but also to bring youth into the mix. And in 2023, we were approached by two groups. The first was the Friends of Patterson Park to incorporate tree keepers into their Youth Works cohort. So Youth Works is a summer job program at Baltimore City for high schoolers. Often it's their first paid job. And they get hired all over. And Patterson Park wanted to incorporate this with tree keepers. So last year, we worked and did 3 weeks in a row where we did small mini tree keepers presentations, and then went outside and implemented the lessons. And we did it again this year, and we're going to continue to tweak this and hopefully expand it to larger cohorts of youth work people. The National Aquarium also approached us. They have, again, high school fellows who do a little more intense fellowship, and they're reworking their fellowship program right now. And the new program, they will have a 2-year cohort, and one of their goals is to have their cohort certified as tree keepers by the end of that 2-year program. Wow, yeah, lots of opportunities, but there are also challenges. We traditionally do in-person. And we move our classes around. Typically, we host at recreation centers. This allows us to move around the city and expose ourselves in different communities to try to get them engaged. So when the pandemic came, that part kind of threw a wrench into everything we did. And we were virtual for quite a while. Now, obviously, there's some people who can do virtual, can't do in person. But it takes away a lot of that interaction, that community interaction that we get both between our instructors and people, and between tree keepers who are learning together in the same classroom and having pizza during the break. So we've worked this through using a panel. So we've incorporated a panel. That's the photo on the left is our first in-person, back to in-person last fall. And we incorporated all other certified tree keepers and tree advocates to talk about how they engage, how they work together, and what got them into it and their challenges. But engagement, keeping people engaged, getting them engaged in the first place, also re-engagement are a challenge. You may have noticed in the previous slide that there was the cards expire after 5 years. So we've been getting recertified is a problem because we just don't have the resources to schedule all that. And so that last photo is our final pruning recertification. And that's pretty much, I'm going to let anything else, hopefully that's going to lead to some questions for people, and everyone will enjoy it. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. Just give me 1 second. Just bring the presentation back up.
Thank you, Rachel. Sorry to throw you for a wrench last minute. I had planned on presenting myself, but couldn't figure it out. So thanks for the support. So I'm talking about Embajadores de los Árboles, a program for Defensores de la Cuenca. This is the front of what we present to the community in terms of like presenting this opportunity. So it's very eye-catching, very colorful. Just really, I think, draws people in. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share that just because we get a lot of compliments from that, and I thought it would be neat to start off with that. So my name is Abel Olivo. I'm the executive director of Defensores de la Cuenca, co-founder, and I'm excited to be here and present and share information about our program. Next slide. So I'd like to start with a little bit about the organization, just to kind of set the stage in terms of priorities and how we work. So Defensores de la Cuenca, which means Watershed Defenders, works to engage Latinos and Spanish speakers and watershed-related issues. We do that by creating opportunities to come together, to have shared experiences in nature, and to learn about the watershed and related issues. We share information to help build a base of knowledge around the natural world and how it's connected and all the benefits to access to nature and a clean environment, with the idea or goal of building out a network of Latino, Latina, and Latina leaders to be present in the green space. We think it's really important to invite folks in to share backgrounds, to share priorities, to help make the work that we do more relatable and accessible to more people from our community. Next slide. And why focus on the Latino Spanish-speaking community? Because we're a large and growing and really unrepresented community in the green space and in the environmental world. Here we have a data point, 19.1% or 62.1 million estimated to grow to 111 million of the population by 2060. So represents a significant portion, significant and growing portion of the population, and really felt it's important to create specific opportunities, specific and intentional opportunities for more of our community members to participate. Next slide. And so here we have a little bit of information about how and where we do the work. There's obviously anecdotal evidence or what we can see with our eyes and where we live, who we interact with. But here's some data points of Latino communities across the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Almost 42% Manassas Park, Virginia. Almost 40% in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and almost 40% again in Hyattsville, Maryland. These are all communities that we work in, that we engage the community, and this is pulled from census data. Obviously, we know that census data doesn't capture a lot of our community members and don't fully reflect the full amount of folks who live in an area. So because of that, we also use school enrollment data from time to time. Here in this last block, we see 86% of ESH Green Elementary enrollment of the school are Latino community members. So, and this is in Richmond, Virginia. Sometimes the data that we're looking for doesn't tell, or that we have access to doesn't fully represent what is actually going on. In Hyattsville, 38.6% of the community is self-identified as Latino or Spanish dominant folks. But in Prince George's County, where this is, it's less than 20% of the overall population. So those micro or drilled in data points really help us identify places where we need to be working. Next slide. So what we do is help to bridge or overcome the barriers of connecting. First and foremost, language. Most of the folks that we work with are Spanish dominant, and don't really feel comfortable accessing other program opportunities that are out there. Lots of great programs going on, lots of opportunities to expand their base of knowledge around urban trees, but just really not accessible in that way. So what we do is we focus in on our Spanish dominant community. We also work to build trust, right? Because, you know, they don't know us from anybody, but we really work to engage the community in mostly through a recreational approach, through hikes, community gatherings, camping opportunities, really to help build trust. You know, it's really tough to break through some of the political climate that's out there for folks to see and experience. There's just generally a lack of confidence in the institution and organizations, and historical mistrust of authority figures. We're also competing against people's time, 6-day work weeks, church. We're asking, right? We're asking them to give us their most precious commodity, and that's their time. And that's not an easy thing to do. So we work through that by really centering the priorities of the community. And that's what we've done with the Embajadores program, is really center some of the priorities of the community to engage and invite folks to participate with us. Next slide. So again, you know, in developing the Embajadores program, we really took a general environmental and social justice focus on the work that we do, and not just Embajadores, but all the programs, getting involved with EJ and social justice groups, finding out some of the priorities or the issues that are most at the center of the community that we want to engage, that really helps dictate or drive some of the partnerships that we have established. I heard both of previous Craig and Fred talk about partnerships and the importance of that. It's the same for us. You know, we really approach partnerships with the intent of helping our partner organization achieve their goals. And through that centering of others' priorities, we really build cultural competency within ourselves. Even though all of us in Defensores are identified as Latino, Latina, Latine, have, you know, backgrounds with the Latin world, speak Spanish, we still are growing to understand culturally what is acceptable and what are norms. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, we created the Embajadores program, which is a capacity building program that has trees as the end result, the end objective, with the help of the U.S. Forest Service, Chesapeake Bay Trust, and other local partners. We really wanted to center these opportunities and make it accessible. We have 6 in-person workshops, 6 virtual workshops that cover a range of ideas and topics. They start with the base of what is a watershed and how it is connected to trees and the important roles that trees play in our lives, but also really incorporate facts and concepts that make trees relatable to our community members. That's air quality, that's health outcomes, that's access to green space, that's flooding and stormwater management issues and why that matters, why it matters for mold and other respiratory illnesses, recreation, how people can take advantage of that recreationally, how it impacts them health-wise, how it impacts the community on a larger scale. And we talk about social justice issues and really provide a broad range of topics that make trees relatable. We do it in a way that the embajadores or the participants can then share that information. So part of the program is for our tree ambassadors to then tap into their networks, into their communities, and invite more people to participate with it as tree hosts. So their job is to essentially to take this information, share it with their networks, invite more people to understand the importance of trees, urban trees, and then invite them to be tree hosts. So a lot of our participants tap into their faith communities, to their school communities, to their neighbors, to their family and friends. So half of our trees end up going to larger, I say larger tree plantings, so 15 plus, and then the other half go to people or areas in the community that are, 1 to 5, typically 1 to 10, depending on space. Because we know that most of our community members live in areas with limited, there's not huge trees or areas for them to plant, but tree canopy is important nonetheless. The in-person portion of our workshops include those topics like were previously mentioned, how to plant a tree, how to maintain a tree, etc. Our folks are given an important component of the program is that we pay our participants to be with us. They are dedicating about 150 hours of their time throughout this entire project, throughout this entire time. About 40 hours of classroom, virtual classroom, and in-person training. I'm sorry, 12 hours of virtual classroom, 12 to 18 hours of field training, 40 hours of community engagement, 40 hours of conversations with the tree hosts, and about 40 hours of follow-up. So part of their job is to continue to maintain communication with their tree hosts, to remind them about watering, about mulching, about troubleshooting any issues. And so it's really a big time commitment. And for that reason, we compensate them for their participation. Next slide.
Sorry, Bill, only about a minute left.
Gotcha. And then this is just an overview of what we have, the different phases, like I said, of the program. So there's a capacity building part, and it is in Spanish. But generally speaking, we present this as the plan for folks to know and understand where we are. The tree host reaching out to the community members to be tree hosts, the tree planting, and then the monitoring and final report. Our participants are not asked to plant the trees. We engage another contractor to do that, but it's important for them to know that how to properly plant and maintain as part of the training. Next slide. And here we have just some pictures of past participants. Next slide. Here's a little quote from Maya Angelou that I like to include in everything. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Next slide. And here is contact information for us at our website. And that is it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists. I just want to remind everybody to please ask questions. Type them in the Q&A box and we will get to them shortly. And before we start, I'm going to turn this back over to Sally for some Menti or we're going to do questions first. I apologize. So we'll start with questions then. So please go ahead. I'm going to invite all three panelists to turn their cameras back on. We have one so far, and this is for all of you to answer. So they are curious to hear about from each of you, what do you see as opportunities to scale these programs to further accelerate tree planting and maintenance throughout the watershed, and what support would be needed to do this type of scaling? Whoever would like to take that first.
I guess for us, the short answer is more funds. We have this really, what I think is a really good model that have been really, really well received from the community in terms of the structure, in terms of the outcomes, and it's just so heartwarming to go to someone's house, plant a few trees, and then have them come out with food for us to thank us, just because they're so appreciative of the opportunity and knowing how impactful that these things can be. We just don't have I guess enough access to the different funding pots to scale it up. So for us, it's just really their interest is there. I think that the people staff, we can work on hiring, but just having more access to funds.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Funding, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of funding right now for the trees, but the funding to support, the program, that like Maryland Tree Stewards type of thing, it's supporting staff to be able to lead those initiatives with other partners.
I'm gonna throw in, of course, we're much more provincial in our scope. We're obviously just in the city. But I think thinking of comprehensively in terms of where you're getting your stewards. So I think incorporating, exposing people in the youth, and then working with it as stewards, both as volunteers and as Beth did, about paying people to do it, and connecting that whole workforce with everything together, I think is going to be really important if you're going to scale it up.
Thank you. Next question. What form do you envision your program? What will it look like in 20 years for each of you?
I'll start. Oh,
No, go ahead.
well, hopefully it'll still be here. I work for a city, so we never know what things are going to look like in 20 years, and hopefully it's in there. And I probably won't be running it, so I don't know what's going to happen at that point. I hope it continues. I mean, I hope it really continues to a certain situation. I'd like to be in a point where, in 20 years, hey, maybe most of the city's taken the class, and I don't have to take it anymore. Everybody's a tree keeper. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and just to build on Fred's point about jobs, I mean, for us, it really is important to compensate people for their time and their participation. So, in 20 years, I'm hoping that the Urban Trees program is a full-on employment sector where people are educating their fellow community members, they're maintaining, they're planting, we have more urban nurseries. We have opportunities for community engagement and programming for students, for young adults. It would be a full-on, broad scale, integrated sector that is a real career choice for a lot of people and accessible.
Yeah, for ours was a pilot program, so it was based on grants. We are continuing it a little bit, but I don't know what it's going to look like next year, to be honest. So we'll see. I'm not sure about 20.
So just wanted to say, as a follow-up to that, Frank Rogers says he thinks this is all a fantastic vision. Just adding that. So a few more questions that just came in. What has been the most impactful partnerships for each one of your organizations?
I mean, our partnerships with the various programs in the region. I mean, for me, it was me, with some partners coming up with the course, but without our, various regional groups, like we couldn't have done anything. So they were leading those efforts, like Shore Rivers, they did a lot of stuff based on our training, and it's not something I could have gotten to the shore, but they sustained that. They're got them more interested in the tree planting stuff, and they're continuing to carry that on, which is what we wanted to see. It would have been too hard for us to try to sustain something on the shore, and they're doing it.
Yeah, it's hard to really pick something like one impactful. I mean, I don't think I could choose any one of our NGOs. They've all really had really important contributions to what we do. I will just point out that we just have a fabulous relationship with the U.S. Forest Service. And they continue to be really supportive through everything we do. Anyway, that's
For us, we had started the embajadores program in Prince George's County and moved to Montgomery County, and thanks to the Forest Service and continuing with CBT, we're able to expand to Virginia, and I hope that will be the same case. Our partnerships with other NGOs and community organizations have been great, but really engaging with the community members and having and inviting them to participate and to build their base of knowledge, and then have them be so excited to share with their networks. There really is a sense of it's hard to explain, of pride and excitement in sharing this opportunity with the community that has been most impactful for me.
Thanks all. A few more questions. From Riley Sullivan, thank you so much for sharing what your organizations are doing to promote community and plant more trees. Are there any state laws in the DMV that give more support for planting more trees? What is the biggest hurdle you all find with actually implementing a volunteer planting event? And does ROW get in the way often in cities or municipalities? So there's about 3 there.
I'll just step in real quick to say, planting in Baltimore City is vastly different from planting in Prince George's County. And it's different from Baltimore or Montgomery County. It really can be a challenge to navigate the process, and yeah, it's really the other folks can talk more about it, but since we're just fairly new in this arena, but it's been eye-opening to see the different processes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It depends where you are, even within the state. It just be drastically different by local rules.
I don't know that I'm going to put in there because the question was about state law, so it doesn't really mess, or at least the one question was about state law. I don't know. There aren't any that's giving us more sports. What's the biggest hurdle you find when actually implementing a volunteer planting event? I'm going to defer to those because actually, so we work in having our partners implement the volunteering event. And does the right of way get in the way of cities and municipalities? So, well, so from our perspective, we are the person controlling the right of way. So we try to funnel people through that way. So I want to say to Abel is, if you have questions about planting in Baltimore City, come to us and come to TreeBaltimore, because that's what we do, is try to navigate the processes and help people plant in the city all the time, day in and day out. Okay.
Great, thank you. We have 3 more questions that have come in. In the meantime, I am going to go ahead and also pull up a Menti code. There is a Mentimeter folks wanted you to take today. And then we'll come back as you start to look at that, and I will ask these remaining questions. Just give me one moment to do that. And in the meantime, for our panelists, I can get you to start thinking about, do you run into limitations in getting trees from nurseries? Are they state supplied?
Yeah, with our program, we didn't really have any limitations. But I know that is an issue, but I mean, we weren't planting thousands of trees either. So from our local nurseries, we were able to get anything we needed.
All right. Go ahead, Abel.
Pretty much the same. You know, we do have local nurseries. Our challenge is through experience. We found that there are certain trees that are more requested, higher requested number of specific species trees. So we have a curated list of trees that we offer. We don't necessarily offer anything. I mean, we do if there's requests, but typically people will ask for the medium and more smaller size trees. So the challenge is making sure that we have an order in early enough in the season that we don't run out of, or the nurseries don't run out of that specific small tree.
And I'll just say that species availability and selection is a huge problem with us, continuing a problem. So we're looking into things about trying to germinate us, work with some of our NGOs about nursery and growing, potentially for us, contract growing, all kinds of questions trying to get around that, because there's what is commonly available in the nursery industry and what species we'd like to introduce into our right-of-way and parks, and they don't always mix together. So it's a continuing problem.
Thank you. On the path to urban nurseries, what kind of knowledge base or partnerships would be needed?
Well, I'll jump in because we've been talking about this for quite a bit. Again, going back to the U.S. Forest Service, their regeneration network Ringer just hired this year a new national nursery specialist for urban and community forestry. And we've been in communication. We've been talking about this. This is a process. How do we do a nursery? Do we all the people involved? And I think it's all cooperation. It has to happen at both a regional, a state, and a local level, and it needs to work with NGOs, at least for us. We've been actually working with our state nursery, where we've been doing seed collection and germination. We've started. So it's a big process. So I mean, I would encourage you to reach out to your local regional things, and also reach out to Ringer, which is the Forest Service regeneration network, because they have lots of resources on nurseries and propagation and things like that.
All right, well, I will go to the last question we have, and I would encourage folks, continue please filling out the Menti that's on your screen. What are the most important organizations to know in this space for people that are just becoming aware? Like NGOs, what are the names of some of the organizations we could look to follow, support, and engage with?
For us, I mean, the cooperative extension in the various states, they were essential. I mean, that's their job, to provide education. So they have great insight, and they're willing to work with you. So that was, wherever you are in this country, I'd reach out to your local extension.
Well, obviously, hey, Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay is a great person to reach out to. They're working regionally, so there are lots of regional groups that do it. If you're in the Baltimore area, you can always reach out to us and we can connect you with people. We have a lot of connections, so it depends where you are. Yeah.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, just want to thank everybody today. There's some resources here on the screen, and we will be also sending these out via email along with the recording when it is available. So don't worry about taking quick notes now. So just again, thank you so much to Fred, Craig, and Abel, and we appreciate your time today.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Rachel.
And Sally, did you want to say anything to close us out?
Just thanks to our panelists, our speakers, and that all of this, the recording and presentation will be available on Chesapeake Tree.net website. Thank you.